Hi everybody, I'm Lou.
And I'm Ben.
Welcome to another episode of Part Spin. Today, we're going to show you what to look for when you're buying a turbo. Intro. This is going to be your guide to what to look for. Kind of give you a rough idea. Now, we're staying within the realm of bolt-on turbos here. We're not going with these unlimited build like 101 mil Borg Warner things like our homies, you know. Shut up, understand. We're gonna show you here. Ben's gonna actually be our guide today. He's our turbo Sherpa. He's gonna show us the ins and outs of what you need. So Ben, what do we got here, bro? Like, what's going on?
Today, basically, we're gonna talk about, like you mentioned, the bolt-on turbos. Basically, there's two different ways. Obviously, there's a lot of gray in between, but you can do a bolt-on turbo, which uses a lot of your factory, if not all of your factory connections, like downpipe, intake, that kind of stuff, oiling lines, water lines.
Yep.
Or you can do a full-on universal setup, which you'll have to get then a custom manifold, charge pipes, all that kind of stuff. So we're basically just sticking with the simple ones, something that will bolt on stock location and something that's going to be relatively easy to bolt on a weekend and make a little more power.
Nice. Well, also bear in mind, just pro tip for y'all, this may be bolt-on turbos, but mind you, you're still gonna need some supporting mods to run this, whether it be more fueling, bigger injectors, a bigger fuel pump to run your fueling. But we're just gonna talk about the turbo units themselves today. Stay tuned for more episodes of Part Spin. Again, don't forget to show us a subscribe down below if you like this stuff. We're gonna cover all the parts we got in this magical place. And again, Ben will be our guide because Ben knows best.
All right, so we'll start off here with IHI. IHI is very well known in the OEM world, and they actually do some upgraded turbos, even though some of them aren't necessarily upgrades.
Okay.
So this first one is actually for Volkswagen. It's called the IS38. This is actually stock turbo that comes on the Audi S3 and the Golf Rs Mark 7. Basically, this turbo is actually a very common upgrade for your 1.8 TSIs, for your GTIs, just because it'll bolt right in place, and this will give you up to 350 to 380 horsepower in some circumstances. So yeah, it's a really nice upgrade, and it's IHI built, so OEM quality. Everything bolts up like factory. Little things may need to be done depending on which car, but for the most part, and there's not going to be any cutting, welding, stuff like that.
And what are some of the basic supporting mods you're going to need if you do get this unit?
So if you go with this and it's not a Golf or an S3, downpipe, you'll need a Golf R downpipe. Okay. And then also intake may need to be modded, right. But relatively simple. Typically, high pressure fuel pump internals are a good idea to do. Not necessarily needed, but it depends on the power level you're going with as well.
And you mentioned earlier too, when we were chatting before we were going through all this episode, this is actually going to work for a lot of the VW subcompact stuff, right? Like,
yep.
You could make pretty much like stock Golf R power from your base models with this.
Yep. Yeah, your 1.8 TSI, your GTI, especially with the 1.8 TSI, you can pump power up quite a bit. So it's a nice upgrade, but obviously modifying always has its downstream effects. Right. So you do have to keep in mind the fueling especially, but other things as well. Yep. But for the ease of just bolting it up versus doing a universal setup, this is still going to be way easier.
Awesome. Cool, so let's move on to some of the Subaru options we got. What do we got here, man?
So for Subaru,
yep.
we also do the IHI. They do the VF48, which is your 08 present, basically Subaru STI's OEM turbo, and then the VF38, which is the 04 to 07 STI turbo. Again, those are very common, so those are meant for the EJ257 motors, but people in the EJ255 do upgrade, so they'll put a VF48 or a VF38 on an EJ255. So that's a good upgrade for sure. It's called the 9F002. So this is the exact same as the VF48, just with a billet compressor wheel, a little bit better. It's just going to give you about a 30% jump in power. So nothing massive, but still a really nice upgrade if you do need a new turbo.
And I like that it stays stock location, you don't have to rotate it or anything, bolts right up to your downpipe.
Yeah, due to the fact that it is essentially an OEM turbo, every single feed line, water line, downpipe, intake, all work exactly with this one, no modification whatsoever.
And that makes it really easy for everybody to do this at home.
Yeah.
And, so we got a Tomei unit here. Bit of the same, bit different. We'll talk about this one.
Yeah, head gasket beware. Not that Lou knows anything about this.
Yeah, no, this is never blown up a Subaru.
Look at this. What's this thing?
Overheating.
Ah!
But sometimes the reality situation is your car blows up. Right, Chris?
Yep. A lot of fun, but shit happens.
Yeah.
All right, so next we're going to talk about this guy. This is a Tomei MX series, which means it has a billet compressor wheel. This is specifically the MX 7960. Good for about 400 horsepower, so probably high 300s, mid 300s at the wheel for a Subaru.
Right.
They make actually quite a few different applications, so for Mitsubishi Evo, for Hyundai Genesis, lots of other ones. Apparently they make them for SR, KA, and RB, which, yeah, the RB one would be sick.
Yeah, that would be dope.
But anyways, they make essentially an upgraded turbo, very similar to how IHI does it, but they kind of go to the nth degree, give you a really fancy, nice wastegate here, give you a billet wheel, and also bump the power quite a bit.
Right.
So this one, like I mentioned, is good for about 400. It's 52 mil inducer wheel, so makes some good power. But the nice thing is, bolts right up to the factory up pipe, factory down pipe. Basically, your intake and intercooler hose all work just fine, and just a really super simple turbo upgrade to make some good power. Obviously, with Subarus, fueling is a good idea. Yeah, there's a lot of different things that you can do with the Subaru to kind of future-proof them when you're looking to make more power. But yeah, great turbo nonetheless.
Yeah. And then just because it's bolt-on, it will bolt on in stock location on your Subaru versus like a rotated setup or like a bigger turbo up front. But you do need supporting mods for this one, guys. You do need fueling. I highly recommend you running a bigger fuel pump, parallel fuel setup. Upgrade your injectors for sure. You should definitely run, with your preference, a catted or a catless downpipe, at least 3 inches all the way to the back. And the most important thing is your Pro Tune. This is not just a plug and play. None of these are really any of the upgrades, unless it's just stock, that you're just swapping out a stock turbo. But if you're upgrading to anything other than the stock turbo, you will need to do these upgrades, guys. Just trust me on that one. Cool. So let's move over to the BMW option here. What we got here, man?
Yeah, so for BMW, it's actually really common, is actually from Pure Turbo. Pure Turbo has a massive amount of turbos that they do. So essentially, take your IHI idea, and it's somewhere between the IHI and the Tomei. So essentially, they take a completely stock turbo,
Right.
as you can see, has the factory head of fold, downpipe attachment, everything.
Yeah,
This
that's
is
really
a
nice.
factory turbo.
Yeah.
Basically, they bore it out and they put a much bigger inducer as well as turbine wheel in it. So this is for the BMW N54. So think your 135, your 335, and this is the Pure 600 turbo. So upwards of 600 horsepower. Most people on pump gas are going to see maybe high 4s, low 5s. On ethanol and whatnot, you can probably get pretty close to that. But again, that comes down to all the supporting mods. But with your wastegate rattle, with a lot of the common issues with N54s, the turbo upgrade is just something that has to be done sometimes, and why not make a little more power?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so this is the Force Performance TF06 18K. This is a fairly common upgraded turbo. It'll definitely make quite a bit more power for your Evo 10. Very common one. So again, bigger impeller, bigger turbine. But again, bolts right up. It does have a little adapter elbow, just because the OEM one's too small, so it won't flow enough. But again, very, very common and simple upgrade to make some more power in your Mitsubishi. But other turbos that we don't have here, just actually released that we don't even have our hands on one yet, is the new Purell upgrade turbo for the Civic Type R. That's going to be a really big one, and then we're going to have tons of stock in them. That'll be good for up to 600 horsepower, which is going to be good. So do the Honda fuel upgrade with that, and you're talking next level. Yeah. part of Tile actually. Tile makes their own turbos, but actually there's been a kind of bit of a marriage, and basically a lot of you have probably seen it but not known much about it. It's called Zona Rotor, XONA, not spelled how you would think, I guess. But very, very, very high quality turbos. The Tile quality that you kind of come to know and trust, and they're making some really good things out there. Their GTR turbo upgrade is very similar to the Pure, so they put their little bit of zing into it, some spice it up a little bit, and one of the guys here has it on his GTR and making well over 700 horsepower. And that's been a really good one as well. And then they also do for the 911.2 911s. They have actually quite a few coming, so keep an eye on that. Precision also has some bolt-ons, so they have a bolt-on turbo for the Focus RS, the Mustang EcoBoost, and quite a few others actually.
Yeah.
And theirs are very much like the Tomei, where they kind of put the Precision turbo swing on a factory location turbo.
Yeah.
So it's a nice upgrade, but with those ones, you're making quite a bit more power, so definitely the supporting mods are more important than they would be with, say, something a little bit more like the IHIs.
All right, so I know we talked about the Tomei unit and the IHI unit, but COBB's also a pretty big player in the bolt-on turbo game.
Yeah.
Want to talk about COBB a bit and your experience with them?
Yeah, so COBB basically has an 18G. Unfortunately, we just don't have one here. Their look at it is very much similar to the Tomei sort of thing. So it's not an OEM turbo, it's their own turbo at stock location, very much like the Tomei. Very similar power, 400 horsepower it's rated for. Very high quality, and yeah, that's very good quality turbo for your EJ 255, 257, so your Legacies, your Foresters, your Super Imprezas.
Right. So another player in the game is also Borg Warner, right? They do some bolt-ons as well?
Yeah, Borg Warner is actually very much like IHI. They're one of the biggest turbo suppliers for OEM cars out there, and they don't necessarily do direct bolt-in upgrades. They do a few, but their catalog's a lot more limited, but they do, especially for Volkswagen, a KO4, which your Mark 6 GTIs, stuff like that came with the KO3 Borg Warner from factory. The KO4 bolts right in and makes some really, really good power. Borg Warner does do a ton of aftermarket turbos, so your EFR series and then your S series turbos, but those won't be quite as easy to drop in as these guys. Yeah. But definitely, if you want to make some power, Borg's got you.
Gotcha. Right on.
So I remember the first time I looked at a turbo catalog. It's like the first time opening a Playboy. Things were hard to understand.
That's why Ben knows best.
Yeah.
Well, guys, thanks for checking out another Parts of an episode on bolt-on turbos. Next week, we're gonna have Ben and Eric go through big boy yin yang twirly boys. Bolt-ons for the noobs, like me. We're gonna make the pros take over. You're gonna see some real big things.
You have any questions, hit us up at JRP. If you want to make more power, we'll help.
And you know, Ben knows best. Give us a call. Him and one of our pros are gonna answer all your questions regarding the bolt-on turbos for your machine. You can literally give us a call, tell us your year, make, and model, and we'll take care of the rest, everybody.
And if you say, I want to blow these pistons sky high, Luke can help.
Oh yeah!
Oh, why does Subarus just blow up all the time?